Alright, my friends, so welcome to today's tutorial. In today's tutorial, we are going to discuss this shop, this NPC skill shop, alright? So we have our NPC right here. I'm just gonna briefly show you how this works, and then we are going to go into some detail, alright? So we have our dummy right here. So just basic dummy. You can change the accessories, change the shirt, change the pants, change the appearance as you want to, but you only have to pay attention to one major thing, alright? And that has to do with the humanoid root part. So we have a click detector inside of this humanoid root part, which contains a script, alright? And this script is responsible to check whether this click detector has been clicked or not. And if it has been clicked, then it receives the player who has clicked. And by doing so, we are going to fire a client, as you can see, a remote event inside of this replicated storage right here. So I've got a bunch of stuff in here, so especially this one, yeah, you can probably know what the next video is going to be about. Yeah, but we have the skill shop remote event right here, and once this one is fire cliented, yeah, right here, a shop GUI is going to be enabled. So this one. And once this is enabled, there's also a script inside of here which runs. And this script is going to get all of the items which have to be defined inside of here, alright? So that's important. You have to define the items you wanna just offer as a skill in here, but we are going to get to this in detail soon. And yeah, once an item there has been bought, or yeah, has been clicked, because that's an image item. So once you click on it to buy it, a fire server happens to this remote event right here once again. Then we have the server script, and this one is going to take over all of this stuff regarding the buy process. All right. So that's just a brief summary of how things work. And of course, when you buy something, the skill right here is them being cloned out and then put inside of your backpack. That's also the reason why we have got a Gatling remote and a Gatling visualization down here, so Gatling visuals, because this is our skill just for testing purposes, alright? Alright, now let's get into detail, okay? So let's go inside of the script. Let me zoom in. So what we have right here is that we have this click detector. So script parent refers to the click detector. The mouse click refers to an event called mouse click, which is obviously when someone has clicked that click detector, all right? And that particular someone is this player right here. So we receive the info of the player who has clicked. And right here, we are referring to the replicated storage, and then to the skill shop right there, so to this remote event. And then we fire a client to this remote event with the player we want to fire client to, because you guys know fire clients, they are dedicated to one player, except for fire all clients. So do not get things twisted. So when you only do fire client, then you have to dedicate this to a player, and the player we are dedicating this to is the player who has clicked the click detector. And the second argument determines some kind of task, alright? So I love to use the second argument as a task in this context, and the task is to enable the GUI. Okay? So that's how this works. And you might ask, alright, so if that's so, and how you enable the GUI, how do you disable it then? Because in yesterday's giveaway video, we were not able to see a close button in that shop, alright? So in that shop GUI. So how are you able to close it then? I've already explained it in yesterday's video as well, but I'm gonna explain it once again. So the shop GUI closes once you walk off, alright? And this happens down here. So we have a variable called enabled, which is going to be true. And this enabled stands for the status of our GUI, whether it is enabled or not. And after this, it has to be enabled, because this is the fire client which is responsible to enable this shop GUI later on. All right. So enabled is true by default. Now we have a coroutine right here. So coroutine resume basically resumes a coroutine which is then being created inside of here. So this might be a little bit, or this might seem a little bit complicated, but it is not. So what this coroutine does is that everything inside of here, so everything in between this and this, basically runs in the background, alright? So we have this while loop right here, and this is especially, yeah, very, very good to use a coroutine at this point because this while loop will otherwise yield the whole script. And if you guys do not know what yielding is, so you guys can imagine that this while loop would pause the rest of the script and even this event right here, all right? So when we would remove those coroutines and the script would be trapped inside of this loop, we wouldn't even be able to tell when someone else has clicked on this click detector, all right? That's the reason why we have to put it inside of a coroutine, so that the script does not get trapped inside of here, but still runs the code and is also able to run this and this at the same time. And also, just to make you guys understand, and this loop runs while enabled is true. So while enabled basically stands for enabled equals true. All right, and while the GUI is enabled, we are waiting. That's important, otherwise the loop will just crash our whole game. And then we perform a check right here, alright? And this check is script parent parent. So script parent parent, basically the humanoid root part's position minus our player character humanoid root part's position. So basically the distance in between this dummy's humanoid root part and our humanoid root part in magnitude means, so when we get the distance of these two components, then we receive a vector of 3, alright? And in order to be able to compare things easier, we are converting this into a single number, and this happens via the magnitude, alright? So we turn this vector 3 into one number. And if this number, I think that the number is in studs by the way, if this number is greater than 20, means if the distance of you and the shop NPC skill guy is greater than 20, then we are fireclighting the skill shop remote event as we have done up here, with the only difference to disable the GUI. So the task changes and enable is false, alright? So by this, or by doing so, this loop also becomes invalid because the only requirement that enabled stays true is now false. Okay? That's how this thing works. Now let's get inside of this GUI because this is going to be the next step, alright? So we have this local script called handler, alright? And this one is important because it basically handles everything regarding this GUI right here, alright? So as you can see, we already have a variable called skill info module, and this requires a module script which is inside of the replicated storage and which is called skill shop info, alright? I'm gonna be explaining this later. Nah, I'm not. So I'm gonna be explaining this soon, by the way. So, alright. What we do right here is that we refer to the skill shop remote event as we have done in the script right here, and then on client event is basically a event which happens when this remote event has been fire servered, and we receive one argument which is the so-called task, alright? So I use this as a task, as I've already told you. So if val, or if the task is enabled GUI, then we want to do all of this right here, alright? So what happens inside of here is that we refer to now handler, so script.parent, so script parent background dot visible equals true. So you guys have to know that this background frame right here is invisible by default, so this is set to false. And right here we are creating a tween. So if you guys don't know what a tween is, then I'm just gonna briefly tell you what it is. So you can imagine that a tween creates a transition in between a property's first status and its goal status, let's say. So let me give an example for that, because this explanation was pretty complicated and pretty abstract to understand. So when we speak of properties, we basically speak of attributes, all right? So let's take a part as an example. So let's say that you have a part, all right? And your part is fully visible, so the transparency is 0. So the property or the attribute of the transparency is at 0, means it is fully visible. Now, your goal is to make that part's transparency 1, all right? Means invisible. So you can either approach this in two ways. First of all, you could just go ahead and declare that part.transparency is now 1 or equals 1. That would work, and that would work fine, alright? The only problem is that it does not look fancy, so there is no transition from your first state of transparency 0 and your second one, transparency 1. Alright, so what you want to do is that you want to create a transition. This is basically the second way I would now like to point out, and this happens via Tween service. So back then people used for I loops. I used them as well. There are also a bunch of videos. So my older videos from like 2019 maybe. Alright, so 2019, 2020, they still feature that way. But I've discovered Tween service, and yeah, the Tween service basically just creates the transition. Alright. Now, the instance we're now going to tween is this background frame, and we are going to tween the position, alright? So, the position of this background frame is usually down here, right? So, so below those boundaries, right, of your screen, okay? And so I fully skipped this, but tween info new are just basically the settings you're tweening with. So the number is the wait time, so basically the time in which this whole tween happens, which is 0.5 seconds. Second one is the easing style, the third one is the easing direction. There is a whole dev hub article about the easing styles and easing directions, so you can check them out. And the third one, this third argument right here, so instead of those curly brackets, so you can just enter your goal properties, your goal attributes, so the attributes you want to achieve inside of here, right? And this is basically the position we want to achieve, and this position is somewhere in the center of the screen. So this background frame just wanders from down here to up here in the center of the screen. That's basically what happens right here, alright? So those three lines, they just do that. Now, this one is interesting. In order to understand this, I have to explain you how this actually works, alright? So let me play this, and then I'll be able to explain it to you. So as you can see, we are clicking this one, alright? And as you can see, the skill shop just comes from down here to up here to the center. And now we have one frame, okay? So this frame is not there by default. If I would enable this background frame, and if I would make it appear at the center of the screen, you would see that the frame itself is empty. So there's no other frame inside of there, okay? So what happens is that the frames, they are being filled in here, alright? So they are not there usually. And this frame right here called icon is a template of that frame, as you can see. So this frame consists of this buy button, and of course some other UI instances right here, so UI corner, UI gradient, but I'm not gonna mention them because they're not that important. So it mainly consists of this buy button and the skill name text label, alright? And you should make sure that the names equal as in this video, or that you at least adapt to changes. So when you, for example, do not want this button to be named buy, but buy button, then make sure to change it in here as well. Yeah, here, for example, alright? Otherwise it will not work, and then you're going to cry in the comment section of why this thing doesn't work. Now, buy button, text label, alright? And what happens is that we're now looping through a table, alright? And this table is contained inside of this module script I was already talking about. So, and that table is basically this one. Now, this is interesting. You should pay close attention to this. If you want to add a skill to this shop, then all you got to do is that you are going to create this bracket, and then you're going to put in the skill's exact name. Let's say that you want to, I don't know, add a OP no me skill, and your local script is called OP. Then call this one OP as well, and then add this, and then you want to add the price. That's important. You want to add the price, okay? And let's put 1000 right here, okay? And that's it. That's how you add skills to this shop. Now let me repeat it once again. Let's use something else. I'm gonna use Kamehameha, alright? Just pretend that this is a Dragon Ball tutorial, something like that. But I'm gonna add a Kamehameha for 100 cash. Okay? That's how this works. Now, if you add a skill inside of here, then you have to make sure that you have a local script or a tool, doesn't matter. So either a tool or local script inside of the skills folder, which has the same name, All right, the same name as the entry, as the index inside of here. All right? As you can see, this one is called Gatling, so Gatling, and so you have to spell it the same way. That's very, very important. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay. Now I'm gonna delete this because I do not have those kind of local scripts inside of here, or those kind of tools. Doesn't matter. Okay, that's how this module script works. And we're now looping through this table. Since we have only got one entry inside of here, it is pretty easy to understand, okay? But if we would have multiple entries, then it might have been, or so it would be a little bit difficult. But yeah, we only have one entry so far. So what happens down here is that we are creating a new icon right here for each entry. So each entry, an entry is at the end just a skill. So for each skill which is defined inside of here, we are creating a new icon. So script parent icon. So script parent icon. So this frame I was just showing you. So this one right here, let me disable it, is being cloned for each skill, and then it is being put inside of this background frame's front frame. So this background frame consists of another frame called front, and this icon is being put inside of there. Then the name of that icon is changed to the skill's name. The buy button's text is being edited to buy, and then those two dots, they basically connect this string with this string. Okay, and what this string is, so V stands for, so let me show it. So we have I and V. I is the index, which is this one, and V is the value, which is assigned to this index, which is this one. So I, V, all right? So X name, so icon name equals I, which is this index, and V is this 200, so the price. So buy, and then toString, V, so toString 200. So why do we use a toString? Because we have a number right here, all right? And I'm not sure if we are able to connect a number to a string, because there are two different data types. So we want to convert this number to a string before connecting it to the string, all right? I hope that this was clear. And we want to connect this string now with this one as well. That's the way. That's the reason why we use two other dots right here. Now, X skill name text, which is this text label right here. So that text is also being changed to that index, and then we are enabling the visibility of that frame. Okay, and X buy, so that so that icon, this frame, the skill frame right here, call it whatever you want to. Dot buy is that buy button. Mouse button one click. So basically, when this buy button has been clicked, we want to fire server the skill shop remote event with the task to buy and with the name of the skill we want to buy. Okay, and that's it. Now, we have now talked about enabling this whole thing, but what happens when we walk off the shop dummy and when we want to disable this whole thing, all right? So what happens then? What happens is that we are looping through this front, all right? So where all of those skill icons land at the end. So get children basically gets everything inside of here, okay? And we want to check if the instance we are currently at is a frame. And that's important because we not only have those skill frames inside of here, but also, as you can see, all of those UI instances. Okay, and we do not want to delete them. That's the reason why we have to check whether the instance is a frame. And if it is a frame, then we know that it has to be a skill frame. Then we can just easily destroy it. After that, we are setting up another tween. So once again, we are going to tween the background, and this time, as you guys know, up here we have tweened the background from the bottom to the top or to the center, and now we are going to tween this background frame from the center to the bottom. Okay, and then after this tween is completed, so T completed, basically tween completed, then we set the visibility of that background frame back to false, so back to its default state. And this is how it works, so nothing too complicated. Now, we are going to move on with the last part of this script, all right? With the last part of the system, which is the skill shop script right here. And this is not even difficult as well. And maybe should talk about this before we get to this buy stuff, all right? So I did not mention this, but we have a leader stat system, you guys might have seen, and it is pretty easy to add a leader stat system. So game players player edit refers to, or let's say, so to this point it refers to this players tab. Dot player edit describes an event when a new player has been added, all right, to the game. And we receive that player by this argument, so this newly added player. And for each player which has been added, we are creating an int value inside of it, and we call leader stats. And inside of that leader stats value, we are creating another value, an int value, which is then being put inside of that leader stats value, and which is called cash, and which is 0 by default. And that's the way on how you create leader stats on your leaderboard. So you need to add an int value called leader stats inside of your player, and then you have to add all of the values you would like to make visible on your leaderboard inside of that leader stats int value. That's how it works. Okay. Now, down here, we are once again having this variable, the skill info module variable, as we have in this handler script, alright, so nothing too special. And right here, we're also referring to the skill shop remote event, so on server event this time. So this event happens when you fire server that remote event. And what we receive is the player who has fire servered, the task, aka the value, and the third one is called what, okay? Let's take a look at these two. So as I've told you, val is the task, which is buy, and what is the second one, alright? And this one is X name, so that's skill frame's name. So basically what becomes the skill, okay? Now, if the task or if val equals buy and skill info module.info, and then we are indexing what, is not greater or equals player leader stats cash value. Now let me explain this to you, do not flip out, okay? So, what we are doing right here is that we are referring to this info table, okay? And you know that this table consists of an index, aka the skill's name, and then a value, alright, which is assigned to that index. Now, what we're doing right here, as you know, what is the name of the skill we are trying to buy? Alright, so we have clicked on that skills frame to buy it. And by clicking on it, you sent this request. So you sent this fire server of buying it, and you sent the name of that frame as well. And the name of the frame is a skill, or is at least a skill's name, you know, because according to this one, alright, so to this line right here. So what is the name of the skill we are trying to buy? And what we're doing right here is that we are now indexing the skill inside of that table, and we're not really indexing the skill itself, so this index right here, but we are indexing its value. So we are indexing this one, alright, so the price. So what we are basically trying to compare right here is that whether the price of the skill is not greater or equals the cash of our player. That's what is being expressed right here. So player.leaderstats.cash value is obviously the player's cash, which is located inside of that leader stats in value, alright? And we are comparing that to the cost, which is right here, alright? That's what happens. So nothing more is happening right here. And if those checks are passed, so if the task is to buy and if the player has enough money, then we are referring to this cash value once again. And then we are declaring that this cash value equals the current cash value minus the price. So we are taking the price from our current cash, and in return, we're now putting or cloning the skill, which is hopefully located inside of the skills folder, inside of our backpack. So if game get service, replicated storage, wait for child skills, so the skills folder, and colon find first child, what? So we are trying, or we are basically looking or checking whether there is something located inside of the skills folder which has the same name as the skill right here we are trying to buy. And the second requirement is that this skill is not located inside of our backpack. Okay, so you're not able to buy a skill multiple times. So if the skill's already in your backpack, then you're not able to buy it. Alright, but if you want that feature to be removed, then all you gotta do is to remove the second requirement right here. Alright. Now, if those two requirements are met, then we are referring to that skill and we are cloning it, and then we are putting it inside of our backpack. And if the skill is a is a local script, all right, then we want to disable it. But if the skill itself is a tool, then we are looping through this tool, and we are checking whether the instance inside of it is a local script. And if it is a local script, then we are disabling it. And then we are enabling it. So disabled false. I don't know if I've set the same thing up here, but when the skill is a local script, then we are enabling it. It means disabled equals false, right? And that's it. So there's nothing more to it. That's how the system works. So nothing too complicated. It is also automated, so you just have to fill in some info inside of this module script, and you have to put the skills inside of here, and then this whole thing runs automatically. All right. So that's the best thing which could happen to you guys. Okay. Now, with that being said, thank you for your overwhelming support on the giveaway video, by the way. So it has reached 2.5k views within 24 hours, which is amazing, all right? And I hope that this one reaches even more. Now, with that being said, thanks for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, share this video to all of your friends. Leave me feedback in the comment section, guys. Take care. See you in the next video. Also, this next video, right, it is hopefully going to be a banger, because that video is going to be about a remake of the GPO Rock Shockwave. All right? Now, see ya.